3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody! Welcome to Download Youth Ministry Podcast. This is Doug Fields with Josh Griffin.
Hello.
We have two very special guests.
Agreed.
One more special than the other.
Way more.
Thank you.
And you have to decide who that is.
I think it's obvious who it is.
Really? Who do you think it is?
Jessica.
No, I'd say Kurt.
Wow,
my-
hey,
Yeah.
We should switch seats to be
Kurt
next to our
hasn't
favorite
been
person.
on very often. Jessica's
true.
been on like maybe 10 times.
By very often,
Yeah.
you mean once in the last 6 years.
Have
Yeah,
you only
the-
been on once?
Yeah.
Oh,
Back
that's,
in
well,
the
10 years.
Park Terrace address or whatever.
Oh, wow. That's a long time
That
ago.
was
wow.
a long
By
time.
Winter Schnitzel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad we know you're not keeping a record of the wrongs.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No judgment. I'm just
No,
saying
yeah.
that's just
It's
the
been
last
a
time I
while.
was on.
Been a
Yeah,
while.
for those of you that don't know, Kurt is not just a youth pastor at Saddleback Church. He's they've got like 55 campuses and youth pastors, and he is the guy.
The youth pastor.
And
An elder and kind of an overall big deal.
Yes.
And Jessica is...
Small deal.
Jessica, you've been on the show a bunch of
Humble
times,
beginnings.
but kind of describe what you're doing now. And
I am no longer at, well, it's been over a year, which is crazy to think about. It's been over a year, and I work with grown-ups, and they're not as fun as teenagers.
Yeah.
That's
There
what I
you go.
do.
Yeah, Jessica and I worked
But they
together
act
for a
like
long
teenagers.
time in the high school ministry at Saddleback, and now you're up at a campus, Saddleback's LA campus,
Los Angeles, come
Working
visit me,
with-
Studio City.
working with adults. What
They're
happened?
so, I mean, here's the thing,
Grown-ups.
though. Adults are basically teenagers that are much more stubborn.
Wow.
Same problems.
Tweet it.
Just a lot more stubborn.
Tweet it right now.
no, that's good. Well, I mean, let's be honest. In the youth ministry that we do, when you have, a lot of kids and teenagers, most of your ministry is to adults anyway.
Exactly.
Very true.
Your volunteers and
Well, and that was Jessica's role for all the whole time in HSM was working with adults and empowering volunteers, recruiting, training, onboarding, like an amazing... You've worked with adults really, really well for a long time.
for a
So this
long
makes
time.
sense.
They're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, love
That's
them.
awesome.
Well, Josh, I think since we don't get Kurt very often, we should aim all the questions at
Yeah.
Kurt.
Great.
Oh,
This is going to be Kurt's first take. You get the first take on every question.
That's a
Okay.
great
Let's start,
idea.
right, and then we'll add to it.
All right,
First
then
take
Jessica
on it.
can
Wow.
do color
Okay.
commentary.
I like it.
And then we will.
I heard that differently.
Me too.
Why is that? Why did you hear that differently?
Put your hand next to mine.
You're a little
of
darker
color
skinned than
commentary.
me.
Yeah, there's some commentary
Person
right
of
there.
color commentary.
But so Jim Gaffigan's darker than me too. So, should we jump right into the question on sexual morality? Kurt, or do you want to warm up a little
Sure,
bit?
There
that's
we
good.
go.
I'll jump
All
right
right.
in.
Right in.
We'll
Deep end.
get there.
Yeah,
We'll
warm
get
up.
there.
Warm up a little. Here we go.
This is from, well, first of all, Jenna, I guess Jenna Beznuka. How would you
that's
say her name? Her last name?
Bajuzki? Zeke? Bajuzik?
Badges.
I would say Smith.
Kurt's was, I want to listen back to what Kurt said because the only thing he had correct was the B. She says it's ba like a sheep, Jew like you're Jewish, and Zeke like you're sick, but you can't pronounce your S.
Bajuzik.
Bajuzik.
Zik.
Bajuzik.
Yeah.
Bajuzik.
She says, my maiden name was Campbell, and every phone call and email was a lot easier.
Oh, man. How much did she have to love that guy?
Yeah, that's true.
Seriously,
I would
like,
get out of that relationship.
You love
quick.
that guy. If
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
for
Now
the
you're married, you're
life.
stuck.
go
Or
to
you keep your last
Bajuzik.
name.
Yeah.
Bajuzik.
Yeah. Could you go Campbell
That's what I
dash
did.
Bajuzik?
You know, that actually is like a source of tension. It's really funny if you ever want to. McBee, who runs Download Youth Ministry,
I know where you're going with this.
Tori.
Oh, I can't wait.
Well, Tori, my daughter, is Tori. She never changed her last name,
No,
and it's
so
not
she's-
because she doesn't want to.
No.
She just has like you got to do all this paperwork, and
Same.
so
Same.
How long
I've
you
never
haven't
changed
married.
my
How long
last
have you been
name.
married?
Almost 4 years.
Okay, so Tori's going on 4.
Jessica.
I'm so lazy.
Yeah, that's exactly what Tori is. So at family dinners,
I'm not even trying to
You're
be
hedging
like
your bets.
empowered.
That's what you're doing.
I'm not trying to be this empowered woman.
Makes me
I
wonder
just
why Kayla
don't
changed
want to
hers
go
on,
to
like,
the
the
security
first
office.
30 hours.
And
Day
change
one.
my passport. I don't want to do it. But the kid showing up, that'll change the
I
game.
know. See, Jessica, she will be so happy to listen to this because she has been. So when we want to get him, you know, with a baby's coming in June, and we'll say things
Which
like
last name?
Yeah, no, we'll just say, oh, that'll go good with the last name Fields. And we just like,
But Doug, did you have a moment? I had this moment when Kayla got married, of her taking somebody else's last name, and
Yeah.
even though it's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You didn't
I was
think
like,
through it?
Well, I was like,
Buyer's remorse.
because I'm thinking you're not a Harker. You're not like
Wow.
you're a
She's
Johnston. There's
she's
no
still
heart
Johnston
or
in my
blood.
phone.
There's no heart or
Never
blood
changed it.
going through your veins.
Yeah.
So suddenly the idea of hyphenating
I
your
get
last
it.
name,
Made more
it seemed
sense.
completely okay with me.
Yeah.
Like it didn't seem weird anymore because
Yeah.
Kayla Harker.
That's why
she's
you have
not
boys.
Kayla Harker.
You have
She's
boys.
not.
You keep that name.
She's not a Harker. She's still a Johnston in my cell phone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're actually still a Torres in my phone too,
Still
so you're not.
She's
She's not a
still- no,
Sanchez.
she's Sanchez in mine.
All right. Now that we've lost
we go.
everybody,
Back to the short-
this
Yeah,
is
welcome
from,
back. Here we are.
This is from Scott Miller.
Jusic.
No, she had nothing to say other than we pronounced her name wrong.
Wait, that was really it? There was no
Yeah.
question?
I probably at one point, one of the shows, I said, I'd love to know how to pronounce your last name, and she wrote
There
it
you
in.
go. Okay.
Yeah.
Bruce Nick.
It's
This is
slow.
from Scott Miller. Scott says, what are your best ideas on how to transition into small groups for the next fall? I finally have near achieved building a group of go-to leads in different age groupings and languages, both English and in Spanish. Wow.
Nice. Oh.
All right, you can speak to that, can't you, Sanchez?
See.
Yeah. What are my next steps? I want to train more adults and consistent peer leaders, but what are the important elements in training? Yes, you can read my name on the podcast, but Doug has probably given it away before reading this on air.
That's true.
Yeah.
You're
PS,
listening. Oh.
P.S. As an aside, will you be discussing the youth specialties news more?
Oh, we haven't even. That you just broke the news right there.
Wow.
You're listening to First Take with Kurt Johnson. Go.
Go. So it sounds like maybe she's going to.
This is a he. It's Scott.
He. Sorry,
Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah, we're in
Sorry.
trouble.
I thought we were
in
still
trouble.
on.
if he's-
Ready?
And second take.
And you're wondering why we haven't had Kurt but once in 6 years.
I've got Jabuz on my mind. It sounds like for the first time they're going to transition to small groups. They've never had a small group aspect. Is that? Well, it sounds like that.
Yeah.
Well, I think one idea is because adding small groups is a pretty big deal. What we don't know is if it's going to be a separate program, or are they going to add small groups to their as an add-on to their current
Right.
gathering, like they're restructuring their current gathering.
I'm guessing it's the former.
They're
The
adding
first
it
one.
on
The
as
first
a
one, thank
program.
you.
No, that would be the latter.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough
Yeah.
show.
It's
No,
gonna be a tough
No
show.
hablo inglés.
Yeah. So we have guests today.
So there's Spanish. There's Spanish groups.
We're so
all right, yeah.
Well, so one thing you could do.
Nothing but the sharpest at Saddleback.
And we leave, the whole thing falls apart. That's
exactly right.
Yes. Well, here's
Okay, transition
Here you
to
go,
small
you
groups
got
in the
this.
fall.
very
First
quickly.
take with
Small
Kurt
groups
Johnson.
of fall. I would take the summer because she's giving herself a pretty good.
Yeah.
He's giving himself a pretty good runway. he's giving himself a pretty good runway. So I would take advantage of the summer to promote the crud out of, hey, something new is coming in the
Yeah.
fall. You know, one of the things, Doug, that you've taught us so well over the years is there's certain seasons that's great to make change. The fall is a fantastic time because it's a big, whether he's adding them to an existing program or it's a whole new thing, it's a big change. It's
Yep.
either a whole nother
Yeah.
program that now you're asking students to come to an additional night out.
Yep.
That's big. So promote it. What's the purpose
Yeah.
behind it? Why is this the good time? Why do we need to do it? If it's an add-on, well, now you're convincing students, hey, what you've always known, you're going to come to this and it's going to be different. So I would take the summer to really think through your messaging. Because every time there's a change, there's going to be people who don't understand it, don't agree with it, wonder why you change midweek, why are you adding an extra night, and so to really have your kind of your thought through answers as far as here's why we're doing it, here's why we think it's a great next step for your students, here's what's going to change, what's not going to change, have all that stuff and just promote it. But I think Scott is going to discover that this decision to go to small groups, I mean, I think he'll look back 5 years from now, 3 years from now, and go, probably a groundbreaking
Yeah, it's a
decision
good one.
in the health of our youth ministry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Kurt, he also says, I want to train more adults and consistent peer leaders, but what are the important elements in this training? So you talked about preparing for the change. We all know that anytime you bring change, there's going to be withdrawal. People are going to be bummed and frustrated. So spend the summer to cast vision. But, you know, Jessica, jump in on this.
Yeah.
How do you train leaders to prepare for that?
What I think is so interesting about small groups is that if leaders don't receive training on vision and purpose, those small groups, even if they're all housed within the same building at the church, you are decentralizing your ministry. So whatever that small group leader begins to talk about and begins to do in that small group is what the purpose of that small group begins to evolve into. And so you can literally have a support group meeting in your building and not even know it, because you as the ministry leader, you're not there with that small group leader. You're kind of walking around making sure everybody has enough chairs and there's a meeting space for everyone. So vision and purpose to me are the heart and soul when you're launching a brand new part of your ministry. Why do these groups exist? What do we want you to accomplish during your time in these groups? What is a win during your time in these groups? Yeah. What do we want these groups not to become? Because it is so, I mean, we've seen it over and over again at our church. Once you start to hand off leadership and allow leaders to feel a sense of ownership, that can go really well, or people can go super rogue. And so ensuring that you're infusing the DNA of your small groups and what you hope to accomplish in your small groups. I love the picture that Kurt gives, which is kind of putting your leaders in the box that you've given them of what you want them to accomplish and the freedoms that they have within that box, and then set them up to win by then, as time goes on and they prove their what would you say, Kurt, when they prove their loyalty or integrity or their leadership.
Well, just as trust is earned.
Thank you. As trust is earned, you begin to expand that box for each leader as a small group leader. And so, and as you've been training your leaders in the past, ensuring that they are earning that trust with you, because for small group leaders in particular at church, you are trusting them with so much. Yeah. You're trusting them with discipling students one-on-one and 3-on-1 or 5-on-1, and ensuring that you're communicating the level of trust you're placing in their hands is so important.
So what would both of you guys say that in terms of just expectations? So we're going to train some leaders. We know that you have to be clear. You can't just say, hey, shepherd kids, because that doesn't mean anything to most people.
I would say, let me make a list of the 5 or 10, I don't know what it is, 5 or 10 things that are uniquely different about small group ministry versus the large group ministry. Because there's there's significant differences in how you relate to students, what bubbles to the surface. And I would, hey, in small groups, here's what's unique. And, the opportunity for deeper conversations is unique. The opportunity for more accountability is unique. The opportunity for leadership, especially if Scott's wanting to do some peer leadership, small groups provide some really cool opportunities. So I'd make my list of here's what's unique, and then I would train specifically to those uniquenesses, probably. That's good. As a starting point.
Would you call it an experiment? Something like, I mean, we would say frame change and an experiment. This feels like a big tentpole philosophical thing. Would you call it an experiment, or would you say this is the way we're doing it? And we're launching this, moving forward. It just feels like for the big ones, do you frame it the same way as a smaller change? I'm curious.
That's interesting, yeah.
I don't think it hurts you to frame an experiment, because if you're planning on it, you're not going into this change thinking, let's gut this out for 3 months.
Right. Right.
It seems like you're all in when you're making this type of move.
It's a big one. Yeah.
I'd be really curious to find out if it's a separate night or if he's attaching it.
Well, the only reason I'm reading into it, because he says transition into small groups. I'm just thinking, because of all the work he's put into it, I've achieved building a group of go-to leads in different age groups and languages. So there's a lot of work into, like, now I'm breaking it into grades, and I've got Spanish and English speaking. That seems like pretty a robust amount of work to then just tag it on to a existing program.
But I'll just throw one other thought. I liked what you said, Jess, about purpose. I think oftentimes small groups will kind of move down to a basic thing. Are you going to be a discipleship group? Yes. Or are you going to be a fellowship group? Every once in a while you have a service-oriented group. But I would say make it really clear what it is it, and what percentage it is. It's 60% discipleship and 40% fellowship. Yeah. Or if you're hoping for real community groups and it's a little more welcoming and environment, it's 80% community fellowship and 20% discipleship. Just define that a little bit. Otherwise, people are going to lean into their gifts. I love community, or I love teaching kids, and I think make it really clear what they're supposed to be, the purpose.
That really helps.
Hey, this will transition a little bit, because one of the things that happens in small groups is, Kurt, you had mentioned accountability, and this is really a follow-up question. This is from Josh Nelson, and so Kurt, lock in that it's a guy. It's a guy.
It's a pretty masculine name, Scott and
Josh.
All right.
Josh says, I'm a DYM member. I was lucky enough to be included in DYM week 1. Especially love the DYM Facebook community and have developed the youth workers that develops youth workers who love to. Our leaders are just starting to use DYM University, and they're loving it. And I am loving providing high quality training they can access on their own devices on their own time. My question is, what are some good ideas and procedures for following up with students when they're not showing up? How long should you wait before touching base with them? What is the procedure for follow-up? Do you talk with parents as well as the student? How does one guide and train small group leaders to make this happen? At what point of not showing up do you take the student off your roster? How long should our adult leaders attempt to pour into this student?
This is First Take with Kurt Johnson.
First Take. Wow. Well, I would say this. There's almost no such thing as too much follow-up when it comes to teenagers. So I think the sooner the better, if you have the means to. So if you don't have a roster, if you don't have a follow-up system, if you don't have some kind of text messaging service, that makes it tough. But I would recommend all the time at every gathering, as soon as small group's over and you notice that one of your students wasn't there, I would be sending that student a text right away on your way home going, hey, Brian, we missed you. Small group's not the same without you. Hope you're here next week. I'm not a big proponent of taking kids off of rosters. I think there's just something about that rubs me the wrong way. I'm a little bit of an evangelist at heart. I just want every student to always know there's a place for them.
Yeah.
Now, maybe if it's a higher bar of entry, a higher barrier of entry at student leadership, or at some really specific ministry team, and by not showing up, they're letting everybody else down and the project can't go on without them, then maybe you have to have that conversation. But I think for weekend church youth group or small group, I would want every kid to know, you know what, even if I've missed 4 weeks, I can show up.
Yeah.
There's a place for me. That's in the world we live in. I think churches kind of, this might be diverting, so forgive me. I think churches have to kind of make a decision sometimes about, are we going to just embrace the fact that kids are busier than ever and that their attendance is less than ever, or are we going to try to double down and reclaim all of that time and make it a higher thing that we're going to help them make this a commitment and a priority? I think it's tough to do that.
Yeah.
So, but follow up all the time. The quicker, the better.
Yeah, small groups is really much easier than if you're talking about a large group gathering a Wednesday night or a Sunday school. You know, even when you're saying I don't like taking people off the list, my was flashing back to years ago when we used to print out everybody who came. You know, we'd start over in September. We started making a list, fill out the card, just update everything, and then we'd print them out in really small print and put them on the table. And I was amazed at how kids, if they hadn't been even in months, were so happy to see their name.
Their name was still on.
It was, and it all, you know, it was no sweat on our back. They just found their name and circled it. Right. But it was a little bit like, okay, I belong. And there was kind of that idea of, I thought of it was in Newport the other day, and I saw this church banner for Easter, and I thought they just missed a great opportunity to say welcome back. Right. Because I think sometimes when kids have been missing, we say, where have you been, as opposed to saying, welcome back, because you know they're feeling guilty, and a lot of times it wasn't even their fault if they couldn't get a ride there, or their parents are making other priorities.
I'll throw out one principle. I would say the more personal the follow-up, the better. So if you have a text message, that's great. It's very impersonal, but that's okay. That's a start, right? A letter that goes through the post office, a form letter that has the youth pastor, okay, that's a thing, that's a follow-up. But let's go to the real personal ones, like a personal text message from somebody, or a student leader who bumps into them at school and says, hey, I saw a youth group this weekend, it was so fun having you there. That is some really, really warm relational follow-up. So I think we kind of sometimes get stuck in the systems and automation and this, but when a student leader writes a handwritten postcard.
Our records reflect.
Exactly, yes, we notice.
Right, well, it's the systems that help you be personal, or the systems can be completely impersonal.
Totally robotic.
You can take the system and then go, okay, thank you, system, for showing me the attendance of Brian.
Exactly.
Now I'm going to personally follow up.
Well, and we would have, if someone filled out like a visitor card or something, you'd have a student student leader write
them a note.
Write them a note. And be like, or someone made a decision, and we have like a decision card. We'd have someone actually write. Those are really warm, personal, high-touch moments. I would say just don't rely on an automated system to spit out an email.
And it is a great opportunity to get students involved.
Absolutely.
So many times in student ministry, I was told, well, you have to sit with me. But when so-and-so chooses to sit with me at church, it's because she wants to. When they didn't know we were in cahoots together, and I was sending her a student to go sit with the new girl. But because the adult is sending the letter or the adult is sending the text message, they feel like, well, of course, you are the pastor. You're supposed to send me a letter when I'm not at church. But when a student leader or a student that you ask, can you just text this girl? She hasn't been at our group for 3 weeks. Can you reach out to her? I think it makes a huge difference in the life of a student.
Yeah, kids are busy. There's volleyball season, lacrosse season, finals week, spring break. Like, we get, as youth pastors who are on the hook for attendance, we care deeply about it. But there's a whole lot of grace. As a parent of teenagers now, my kid isn't going to make it to every night of small group in the year.
We just did a very anecdotal kind of sampling, and we're convinced that our weekend attendance, midweek's actually a little bit more consistent because their schedule is more consistent on Wednesday night than the weekend. But we're convinced that our weekend attendance is about 1.5 times a month. Is our average about 1.5 times a month. Yep. That
most imagine if you guys were teaching the Bible.
Ooh, it would plummet.
So if you're doing it,
wow, 1.5.
That's
1.5.
brutally low.
Now that might be Orange County, Southern California unique, but when you think about that, it simultaneously it ups the ante for follow-up.
Yeah.
Because just think if you could, what would happen to our youth groups if they would come twice a month instead of once and a half? It just it ups the ante for follow-up, and it also makes you strike the balance of, I don't want to make them feel guilty for missing because there's so many factors at play for why they just aren't as consistent. And so how do I make them know, man, we miss you, we want you here, they're always welcome, without it feeling guilt-ridden for not
But there's
being
weeks
there.
that you're going to be staying with your mom instead of your dad, or you're going to go on vacation or whatever.
Yeah. Well, we also, we have a 70% divorce rate in Orange County too.
Right.
So
that has to factor in, right?
Yeah. Some kids are going to be at their parents' house 2 weekends of the month.
Right.
Doug, you haven't mentioned this show's sponsors yet. I don't know if that's in the plans. I'm just throwing, I don't want to co-host you or anything.
No, it's about time you actually do your job, Josh. And that's great. Yeah, our primary sponsor. I was just so excited to have.
No, I get
Kurt
it.
and Jessica here that I just got lost in. Let's get right to it. We have great sponsors. Orange is our primary sponsor, which means that we do a lot of stuff with them, and they have an amazing curriculum. Kurt, you know about their XP3 curriculum.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
And
middle school and high school both.
We have the best discount if you want the secret DYM discount.
No one else offers the XP3 discount.
Yeah,
it's
just
us. It's true.
Yeah, we have a very special relationship with them, and we give a deeper discount than they can get anywhere else. And
even from Orange itself. Orange will not give you this discount. We will give it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's
very impressive.
So how do they get that? They have to just write in or what?
They just send us an email at web show. No.
Podcast.
Podcast.
It all works.
Podcast at downloadyouthministry.com, and just put in the subject line XP3
every
curriculum.
URL, so it all...
So podcast at downloadyouthministry.com, and then we are have an amazing sponsor who's been with us from the beginning, Leader Treks, Doug Franklin, who participates in every single monthly member item.
Yeah, and pull off the Student Leadership Conference this summer too, which will be fun, just a couple months away.
Yeah, and Bethel is a sponsor, and we're excited. I'm actually going to be with Bethel next week. I'm in Granger, Indiana. And a lot of people that are going to Student Leadership Conference are staying on their campus, and they have a great youth ministry legacy, and we're excited about them. And
Give Central, don't forget about Give Central.
Give Central, that's where we are housed.
That's right.
We're housed in Give Central. We are in the Give Central studio.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Get ready. First take.
Here we go.
Get ready.
This is from Chris Galbraith, who's a student pastor in Henderson Street Baptist.
Guy or girl, could go either way.
It's true.
Let's go female, because we had Scott, Josh. Let's go. Chris is a lady. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm going to just say it's male only because it's at a Baptist church, but that's just me. I'm playing the denomination card there.
Yeah, you're playing the odds. You're playing the odds.
I am playing the odds.
I'm with you now too. I mean,
although Baptists don't really play the odds, that would be like gambling. So Chris says, what are some ways to get parents who don't come to church more involved?
This is First Take with Kurt Johnson.
Parents who don't go to church more involved. Well, lots of just some real practical thoughts would be, depending on the age of the students, I think one thing would be to have some kind of curbside ministry where you've got either yourself. I think it'd be fantastic if it could be Chris himself
or
herself. But if not, a key leader or somebody where when parents are dropping students off, they are at the curb. Hey, I'm Chris. I love that you let your daughter come to youth group every single week. If they had some kind of pre-printed or something, hey, if you've ever thought about what we have here for families and parents, man, you might want to check this out. We've got so much more going on. But just having that relational connection. I think oftentimes parents, there's a little bit of they're very comfortable kind of not knowing what's going on. They trust the church. They drop their kid off and they go do their thing. And it's almost like they're not involved. Some of them you're never going to get. The ones who are just antagonistic towards the church, but for whatever reason they let their student go. Pretty much of a long shot to get that parent.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot of parents who are just neutral, and they're probably positive towards church because they're letting their son or their daughter go, but they've just never had nobody from the church has ever engaged them. So I would just look for real practical ways to how do I engage that mom or that dad more than just an email or whatever, but a face-to-face, thanking them. Do you have any questions? Maybe once a quarter doing something for parents that's a felt need for parents.
Yeah, so like how to navigate the smartphone.
Yep, help my kids addicted to their phone or whatever. And that's a felt need that a non-believing parent feels just as much as a believing parent. And to have those kind of hooks in the water and invite them, just some real practical.
Don't you think parents would come when their kids are doing something too?
Yep.
So if you have like, this student is going to teach a point, or this student is going to do the lead music for the first time, or this kid is going to, we're taking over the adult services, whatever.
This student's going to get their testimony. You might want to come hear it.
Huge. Yeah. They're talking about you. But no,
this kid's going to hand out bulletins.
Exactly. Push next on PowerPoint. Yes. Yes.
My favorite
But
kid.
oftentimes, as a parent, I'm constantly going to my kids' stuff. Well, the church could be the same way. Like maybe they would come to an event or a workshop or something, but I'd say if your kid's doing something, invite them.
Yeah.
Jessica, how do you feel about Josh, the last three questions jumping in before you can get to it? We give Kurt the first take, and then he doesn't.
A lot of memories of my past.
Right? Of working with him.
Is Second Take with Jessica Sanchez or Torres.
Third take.
Well, I was like thinking about the power of a student inviting their mom or dad to church. Like, I just remember I was that student whose parents didn't go to church when I was in high school, and I gave my life to the Lord. And I invited my parents to church because they had like a service where the youth was with the grown-ups, like a worship together weekend, what we call it at Saddleback, where the teenagers worship in the main worship center with the adults. And that was like an open door for me to be like, oh, because I always had this dilemma that I was with the youth, and like, why would I send my parents by themselves to the worship center? They didn't know anyone in there. And so when we had like a special Sunday where the youth was with the grown-ups, our youth pastor was like, invite your parents to church if they don't come, because you can sit at church with them. You're not going to be here in the youth. It was literally a garage that we met in the youth garage. And I got to invite my parents to church, and I sat with my mom. My dad didn't come, but my mom came. And I got to I remember I walked her around church, and I showed her, like, this is where we meet, and she didn't give her life to the Lord that night, but she ended up giving her life to the Lord a few years later. But that was the first time that I got to invite my mom to our church, and I sat with her at church.
That's awesome.
And so I think opportunities where teenagers are challenged and told that they actually have incredible leverage in their family. They don't think they do, but to say your mom and dad would probably come to church if you invited them, if you told them how much this meant to you. And then having moments where teenagers are in the worship center and they can actually take their mom and dad to the sanctuary or the worship center, I think is a really great opportunity for them too.
Our junior high ministry, Katie, started this a couple of years ago, and it's been fantastic, is they do a family weekend once a year in junior high. So it's what you're talking about, giving a chance to go to church together, but instead of having them go to the worship service together,
in the youth room.
It's in the youth room, and it's in the junior high. Hey, you got to come and play this game, and we're going to sing these songs. And we get tons of parents because their kid invites them to come
with me to
their space to play their game, sing their, and then Katie does.
It's so sweet.
It's always the same thing. She does a great message on kind of geared to both about how to keep peace at home and work together, and it's
well, and kids will eat up watching their mom or dad up playing a messy game or eating something gross or whatever it is. Like they'll be like, "That's my dad." So funny.
It would be interesting. You know, you have your anecdotal 1.5.
right.
It would be anecdotally, it'd be interesting to know, or even statistically, like of middle school kids, how many actually invite their parents to that?
Yeah,
because I'm thinking if I was when I was in middle school, I wouldn't want my mom or dad.
There's a whole
there.
lot that don't want that. For sure. The ones who aren't hiding under their chair from embarrassment love seeing
their parents.
No, I'd just be curious on what the stats are on that.
Well, and even in the same family, I can think of the 4 kids I have. One kid would love to have me there, and the other 2 would be like, one would be like, nah, and the other one would be like, no way. So even in the same family, you could have different kids that would respond differently.
I feel like I totally know who it is in your family. Who's like that? Yes, you need.
Who's the no way? Lexi?
Yeah, Lexi.
Really?
Yeah. For sure.
Christian would be like, whatever's fine. Also would be like, Dad's coming around. And Lexi would be like, no.
Yeah.
I could totally sense
and I still have one more coming, so we'll see.
All right, here's our last question, and it's a doozy.
Okay.
It's a doozy. We promised
Kurt,
that.
get ready.
Yep.
Get ready.
This is a sexual immorality question, Kurt.
Okay.
My heart is heavy as I'm ashamed to write this message. Oh, no. So I'm sending it anonymously as I don't want to potentially hurt my reputation. Question. At what point does sexual immorality disqualify a youth worker from ministry? Background. I'm a relatively new youth worker, 8 months in an official position, 5 years in a volunteer intern role. I'm a young single adult who in the past struggled with pornography. I've been free from the chains of that addiction for a few years now. I do, however, still struggle with lusting in the form of inappropriate thoughts. I've had impure thoughts about a adult student, 18-year-old senior, so adult student. Under no circumstances would I act on said thoughts, but the thought of it repulses me. I don't want to end up as one of those, quote-unquote, those youth pastors who fall into temptation with a student. I have set up strict personal rules for myself and my interaction with the youth. I've confessed and repented of my thoughts to a friend and mentor, and I'm confident that I will not act upon them, but I still feel ashamed of these thoughts. I'm ashamed to admit this to my elders and my senior pastor. Is that even necessary? Am I disqualified to minister to the student I've lusted after? Such an honest,
really honest.
And you know what? Struggling question.
Yeah.
And to write that out, you know, that's a sincere struggle. So grateful for your questions.
Yeah, no kidding.
And if any questions, whether they're that or the other types, I'm giving you a little time to think, Kurt. You can send your questions to podcast@downloadyouthministry.com and podcast@downloadyouthministry.com. Our primary sponsor is Orange.
Give him some time, my
primary
man.
sponsor is Orange.
I'm waiting for your lead-in.
It's coming. Oh. Thankfully, this is First Take with Kurt Johnson.
Well, Doug, first I'll echo what you said real briefly a second ago. I think to our friend, just the fact that he wrote in is huge.
Yeah.
You know, and what we don't know is, I mean, obviously it's not the first time he's talked to anybody about it, but that's not easy. It's not easy to write down an email expressing your struggles and your shortcomings. So that to me is a huge indication that there's some healthiness in the process, right? It's not a secret. The shame, you know, the enemy wants to shame us all the time, anytime, 24/7, and just the willingness to say, here's what's going on. Yeah. I think that's breaking the foothold that Satan wants to have on us. I think the fact that he's got some safety points, you know, when you are concerned about messing up, when you're concerned about not being qualified, when you're wondering, that right there is an indication that you're probably okay. You know, it's like when the teenager comes to you and says, I'm afraid I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm afraid if I do this, I'm going to hell. You know, my answer is always, well, the fact that you're even concerned about it means you're probably okay.
Yeah.
You know, because you're not blowing it off. So it's really hard for me to say to somebody who struggles with lust that you're disqualified for ministry.
Yeah.
He's single, you know, find me a single person, especially guy, but a single person in this day and age who probably hasn't struggled with pornography, who doesn't struggle with lust, who hasn't probably seen an older student, and you know, I mean, it's the thoughts come in your head. How you act or don't is the larger issue, I think. So at first pass, I hear that and I say, if he's being honest with us about all of these systems and checks and accountability, my mind goes to, I don't think you're disqualified from ministry for that. And I'm not even sure if you do owe it to your elders to share that, because he's sharing it with some other people that he's safe.
Friend and mentor, he said.
A friend and mentor. So now I think you would have to be honest with yourself too and go, hey, if I do think he's probably disqualified from any kind of below the most passing cursory ministry to this particular student. Yeah. You know, I would say, you don't let yourself in any way put yourself in a situation or her in a situation. But beyond that, I think we have to give ourselves the grace to minister within our weaknesses and despite our shortcomings. Because we could write an email, just every one of us, listing some different struggles.
Oh, right? Josh could write one just like this.
No, it's a fair point to go, we all have sins, we all have temptations, we all have lust, we all have, and someone is going to come across in your path that you are attracted to. And we don't necessarily like to talk about that. Right. But there are people in the world that you will be attracted to. And I think your answers are good. It's nuanced. He
did that again, didn't he, Jess? He jumped right in front of you.
Yeah. She gave me the
please
say something.
Jessica Sanchez.
And actually, that's one of the reasons you had to leave Josh's team, wasn't it? Because
to find my voice.
You struggled. No, I mean, you struggled with lust over Josh.
Oh, absolutely. I was like, Jess, it's too much. You have to leave. I'm a sweet piece of man candy. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Female perspective before I jump in and wrap it up?
I agree with everything that Kurt said. I do think in times where we find ourselves feeling fragile, feeling weak, that's when we lean into the body of Christ and we say, hey, you get a female leader to say, can you disciple this girl? Can you be with her and walk alongside her? And you don't have to tell that female volunteer why, that female leader why. All you have to do is say, I really think that she needs to be loved on by you. Yeah. And I do think that there are times where we joke at church about, we have protocol at our church as ministers where we are not in a room alone with someone of the opposite sex who isn't our spouse if we are married. There's just a lot of things that we do to really guard and protect our hearts and guard and protect our own integrity. And there are times where people are silly about that because we need to get from point A on campus to point B, and our campus is kind of big and we can't ride in the same car to get to a different building. But it's in times like these when I listen to these emails where I just think, what a wonderful way to live, to say, I'm going to do everything that I can because I already am living in a body that is fragile and weak and desires to give into temptation, to set up safe protocol, which it sounds like he's doing that, to guard yourself because even in our best moments, the enemy wants to slip in, take a foothold, and just attack us. And so just to continue to confide in that man that he's confided in and to say, can you help me to continue to make these choices where it might sound extreme to someone on the outside, but sin is extreme. Yeah. And I have full confidence he will not be one of those youth pastors who's going to be talked about in that light.
And there is something that I think it'd be a mistake to overlook this truth. There's something different. I don't know what it is, but there's something different about sexual sin and sexual struggle. Yeah. That, I mean, it's not just, hey, I'm tempted to smoke pot. You know, I mean, our sexuality is woven into us by our Creator, and it's so much a part of our DNA and our identity. So there, a sexual struggle of any type is more likely to have a grip on us, is more likely to follow us through our life than some other struggles. So I would, sin is sin, but there's just something different about sexual sin, and so to be extra attentive to it, I think is really prudent.
Well, and extra attentive to it. What I was thinking as I read it, as I thought when he says a friend and mentor, you know, Kurt, when you and I were working together, you know, I could say something to my friend and mentor Jim Burns, who was never at our church or never at our youth group.
Right.
And so that's nice. It's nice to come clean.
Right.
But it would be more strategic if I was
somebody who's there,
somebody who's going to be there. If I can confide in one person, I felt safe with that person. Say, hey, you know what? I'm just FYI, I'm attracted to this person. Yep. And I think what you said earlier, you're single. You know, when I was young and single in youth ministry, you know, I wasn't that far apart from age-wise from the you know girls in the youth group, and some of them saw me as a older male figure that wasn't in their life. They were kind of flirty, you know, that type of thing. I mean, there was definitely girls in the youth ministry. I went, oh, I'm attracted to her. And that's how you know you're getting older, when you're not attracted to the kids anymore, but you're attracted to their parents. Okay, that's one of the signs. Like, man, that girl's
her mom.
His mom is smoking. Yeah,
we're just getting real. We're getting real right here.
Getting real.
So anyway, great question. I appreciate your vulnerability. Send your questions to podcast.
Her grandma is so cute.
That's good.
That's too far.
That bridge into the next stage of life.
Guys, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, it was great. Great.
That's awesome.
Kurt, don't wait 6 years again or 7 years or whatever it's been.
Come back anytime.
Come back anytime. Seriously.
Great. Jessica, thank you for
always
happy to be here.
for always being willing
to
be here.
Always.
And glad that you could. And this was episode 331.
Oh, OMG.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, not 332.
32, are you sure?
It's 332.
Oh, 332. That's right. That's right. 331 we did last week on the Youth Pastor Diet.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh,
what's
that's
your
right.
take on why podcasts have suddenly
Why they're
gained?
back?
They're back.
That's a good question.
With a
We never left.
vengeance. No,
Yeah,
I
we've
know.
been here
They
all
stick
along.
it out.
That's right.
But I mean, you got, and it's like all of a sudden,
I know.
podcasts are everywhere.
That's because the commute in LA got that much longer because everyone moved there. Let me tell you, when I moved back to LA, I'm spending hundreds of hours on the road.
Yeah.
It's the on-demand.
It's on demand. I also think that much like the internet created where, you know, in the old day, think about even records. Like to be a musician, to make a record, you had to be signed by a label, the whole bit. Then we come out with CD players, and you know the four of us could record a record tonight.
Yeah, no one would listen to it, but we could record it. Yeah.
Then publishing was like that.
Yeah.
You know, Kurt, when you signed a book deal, that was like a book deal.
Right.
That was before self-publishing. Now everybody can publish. You know, and then radio.
Yeah.
Now,
radio show was a
in
big
essence,
deal.
So
we're doing
our
our
podcast sort of the new version of blogging.
I think
Everybody's
so.
an
For a
everybody's
season?
an expert. You have a
I would
voice.
say
You can get
you have something to say.
Okay.
Well, and I think it's fun. Our podcast network, there's a ton of different angles, like little different nuances and perspectives and context for ministry and passion. So it's fun. This is more of a general Q&A show, but
Right.
it's really fun to go, there's a guy who's doing a really great job. You've never heard of him or her, whatever. And they've got a perspective that's valuable.
Well,
So
there's also danger to it. I think there's
sure.
a positive side of the niches and different angles, and like, you know, in my third decade, one of the podcasts
Derry Prinker
in
he's
our
amazing.
network,
Yeah.
you know, he's in his third decade of youth ministry. That has a different angle to it.
Yeah,
I mean, so we've kind of gone after some of the niche type shows, but I think there is a danger when a lot of people who have no experience
everybody has a platform.
Yes.
immediately. Well, that's what the
Yeah.
internet's done. The internet's given everybody a
it has,
platform, whether they're deserving of that platform or
Yeah,
not.
serve in youth ministry for a year and a half and then become an expert.
Yeah.
Well, actually, put in some time.
People who know this is not recording. Is it still recording?
No, we're recording.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we are.
Yeah.
Still here.
Well, let's end it.
Well, let's end it. Bye. And
Then we're
keep
going to do last take with Kurt.
Push stop. We got to hear this. This is awesome. Bye, everybody.
Kurt's about to throw somebody under the bus, and I can't wait.